right? Because everything around me is a plateau, so I'm flat. Okay? So there is this fellow Cantor, remember Cantor last week, who, thinking about this, by the way, these ideas were introduced by Cantor. The second game is with Cantor. The first thing to recognize is that this is a game of division that leads to dust. Okay? And of course, forms over dust. He argued, this poor fellow is thinking what that person shouldn't think. This person thinks that he has landed in a place that is not. Okay? So, being a good scientist, he concluded this object needs to be named the devil's staircase. By the way, he was not afraid to say the devil, nor am I, the devil's staircase. So this object is a devil's staircase. So why? Because the object comes from division, 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 and that is one of the traits of the devil. And because upon landing on the object, you will have the wrong impression that things are okay, when in reality they aren't. Okay? So yes, in this class, and a bit more in this lecture, the devil is a character of the story. Of course, this is the class on Christianity, so the devil is part of the story. Okay, so he appears first with this infinite stair that have infinitely many steps that confuse the poor fellow that lands on it. Now, the way I learned about these things was not at all the way I'm explaining it to you. Some years ago, I learned about these ideas because the first game is associated with the way turbulence happens in nature. Okay? This is something I read while at UC Davis, something that wasn't taught to me when I was at MIT. The idea was turbulence is something that nobody can understand. But there were some people, whose names are going to appear in a second, that actually showed that turbulence is consistent with a game for kids. Namely, the first game. So, there is one equation in this thing, and one equation only that I need to describe. So here I have a fluid, okay, which is of course water. The air is another fluid, and the results that these fellows found has to do with the air. But I can explain them to you in terms of water. So, the liquid has an internal property which is known as the viscosity of the fluid. This has to do with the ability you have to move inside the object, inside the fluid. Okay? So of course it's easier to walk than it is to swim, because there is more resistance in water than in the air. But there is such a thing known as the viscosity. The viscosity is the denominator of this formula due to a British fellow, Reynolds. In the numerator, I better close this so that I don't mess it up. In the numerator is going to be an external force I give to the fluid. The external force is inertia. Inertia. I didn't do it, but you see why. Okay? But the obvious thing is this. If there is no inertia, the fluid is basically whole. But if you add a lot of inertia, you're going to break the cohesion of the fluid. The question is, what happens to the fluid? The answer, as obtained by my friends that I'll show you later, is that you generate a cascade of eddies. So there are elements that carry different amounts of energy from being together until the whole thing gets away, until the whole thing gets dissipated. Okay? So, this is at rest, but if this number is sufficiently big so that the inertia breaks the cohesion, that triggers a cascade. And the cascade is consonant with the first game. So, there is a cascade, and this guy has more energy than this guy, and this guy breaks into two eddies, and this guy has more energy than this one, and this breaks into two, and this has more than this, and so on and so forth. Okay? By the way, when I read this paper, I said to myself, gee, I have to ask for my money back, because they didn't ask me, they didn't teach me this stuff. Okay? It's a game for kids. That's what they found. What they found is that if you look at turbulence along one dimension, the data has layers. I showed you before the 13 layers. You have different layers. So in the data, you could discern the presence of layers. And not only that, but you could count how many things are there in the layers in exactly the same way that we tried to do it before. So there are layers that are more frequent than others in the same spirit of what we had on the cascade. Examples: atmospheric turbulence, the boundary layer, the wake of a cylinder. Let me explain the wake of a cylinder. So this is a cylinder, so I can explain it. You put this on a wind tunnel, and you put a lot of air going against the cylinder, and on the wake of the cylinder over here, there is going to be turbulence created by the cylinder. It so happens that that type of turbulence is explained by means of the first game, as I'll explain in a second. Okay? By the way, the wake of a cylinder is a good example for you to be patient when you are trying to depart from here, home, or whatever. Yeah, you need to wait until the next, you need to wait your turn, because a flight needs to depart in due time, because you don't want to be in the wake of that flight, because if you do that, that can kill you. Okay? Turbulence, by the way, is a violent process. Right? So what is turbulence? Because I haven't even mentioned what the word is turbulence. Turbulence is what you experience when you go into a flight and all of a sudden the terrain is a bit moving, and especially when all of a sudden, ooh, okay, things come down and everybody becomes scared. And I say that typically at that time some people become Christians right away, because one never knows if something is going to happen to you. That is turbulence. Okay? The things that have to do with turbulence pertain to the thorns. The flight is going through high thorns, but remember, there is a high thorn and little thorn and high thorn and little thorn. So once you go to the intermittencies of the flight is doing the things that you don't want them to do. Okay, so that's important. These always dissipate. Always dissipate. The process starts, it goes into a cascade, and it dissipates. I have an artistic rendition of that done by me. Okay? Because turbulence is not just about nature, it's about you and me. Let me do it for me. Okay? So, this is my turbulence. I accomplished nothing. The energy dissipates. I'm a fool in front of the camera now. But that is what I'm basically talking about here. Okay? So turbulence. But in the process, there is violence. And by the way, sometimes the violence is not just against the table, but it could be against people, right? And it could be not just with my hands touching the table, but other manifestations, as it happened at the City of Davis last Friday, last week. You know, horrible things that have to do with the unpredictability of turbulence. So that you appreciate the results, these are my friends, Menevo and Srinivasan. This parabola is the shape that I explained before. 1, 12, 12, 66, 66, and the parabola. Okay? There is more. There is a punchline that I haven't said. It's not only true that the first game is good for describing turbulence, but the choice of the P and Q that best describes turbulence is the same 70 theory that we had before. You could scratch your heads, that's amazing. Okay? So 70 theory, this is the way nature does it. In terms of the partition of energies, always in movement, leading to dissipation. By the way, here, for those of you that are paying attention to the graph, there is the parabola. The parabola comes from the game. And there are a bunch of dots that you could see superimposed. These dots come from experiments associated with this, in the United States, in Europe, in Afghanistan, in Iraq. It doesn't matter. You get that the data goes extremely well through the spectrum of the records. Okay? Okay, so having explained all of this, are we together? So let me summarize. Game number 1, the game of imbalances. Game number 2, the game of holes. The game of holes lives in the layers of the game of imbalances. Okay? When you accumulate those games, you get these objects whose lengths are equal to 2. And those objects are Davis staircases. So I repeat, 70-30, Davis staircase. 60-40, Davis staircase. A hole of a third, Davis staircase. A hole of 0.02, Davis staircase. All of these things are devilish staircases. All of them. Now, this has also to do with turbulence. Oh, the devil, turbulence. Did you know that the devil is also known as the ruler of the power of the air? Anybody knew that? This is in the book of St. Paul to the Ephesians. That's one of the names that the devil has. By the way, he's also known as the ruler of the world. I don't know if you are paying attention to what is going on in the world, but it appears that that is a very good description of what happens in the world, right? In a couple of weeks, we are going to talk about chaos. And chaos appears to be one of the most favorite words happening in the world these days, right? There is chaos here, there is chaos there, there is chaos in places where it shouldn't be, but it's chaos there, it's everywhere. By the way, chaos and turbulence are similar things. Okay? It's disorder, forms, dust. Okay? Okay, so I'd like to say to you that given that the ideas are universal, you could use them not just to describe matters of nature, but to describe you and me. At least I'm going to make the case for me. I already did an artistic rendition of stupidity before, so I'll do another one. Okay? This is me. I would say that this applies to imbalances. Oh, I am more than you. 70% for me, 30% for you. Why? Hey, it could be worse. It could be 80-20. So you say nothing. Okay? By the way, when I came years ago, the thought was, oh, I'm from MIT, so ask me anything, I know everything. So I went to MIT. Okay? And I had this idea that I was better than anybody else. How silly I was. Okay? I was. I'm no longer like that. But I was. So there are a bunch of things that are intrinsic on the first game, on doing these imbalances, in judging ourselves better than others. Sometimes enjoying ourselves less than others, right? Because it's not just from high to low, but sometimes it's from low to high. What about the second game? Oh, I'm going to do a party, but this guy, yeah, I'm not going to invite him. This guy, yeah. I'm going to place that person in a hole. Huh? Do you do that? I don't know, I do that. Okay? But let me put it this way. I used to do that. I try not to do that anymore. Okay? I say to you that this also has to do with political systems. Yeah, this implies chaos, complexity. Complexity has to do with politics. Of course, it has to do with politics. By the way, political systems sometimes start very well. There is a horrendous dictator, and we don't want that. And then we want to do it right. At that time, you say, yes, do it. And then all of a sudden, some people come to power, but they have their own ideas. And the ideas are, I'm going to play with you and with you, but if you disagree with me, I'm going to toss you into a hole. Right? Yes? Have you seen that pictorially at least? Right. There are places still on planet Earth in which that happens. I have to say that this is us. Competition. I'm going to beat the blue out of you because I'm better than you. Okay? So, inequities, competition. This poor fellow is quite cynical because he's not allowed to play. So it's moving away from the game. And all of a sudden this person says, I'm going to do some crazy thing because people didn't pay attention to me. Because I was important and therefore there's a policeman and I'm going to do what I want to. It's silly. Of course in here this is what happens if you try to force equality. I've been to the country of Cuba on several occasions, and in Cuba they are fearful. They are forced to be equal, but you better be careful. If they see me talking to one of them, then he may get in trouble. Not because of me, it's because I'm not from there. So they are very mindful. Of course, this produces fear because if you know somebody that has been put into a hole, you don't want to do something silly so that they put you in the hole too. Okay? So the problem with these things is that they propagate. Right? So the question is, why do we do this? I say to you that we do this out of stupidity. Okay? Stupidity means selfishness. We do this out of selfish postures that typically are associated with violence, as I did on the table, and as it happens in the turbulence example when you're flying. Okay? Some facts. If you study what happens in the world today, and by the way, for you guys taking the class, the next problem set is going to be about inequalities in particular. We're going to learn the state of affairs of the planet in terms of where we are. Okay? In the news lately, there are 26 people that are billionaires that own 50% of everything that exists. The imbalances are huge. So, 2/3 of the population of planet Earth live under poverty. Okay? I don't know if you knew this, but it's not 2%, but 2/3. By the way, in talking about selfishness, it's a good idea in talking about the eddies. Okay? If you're looking at the eddies do this. Right? A natural eddy, let's look at the most common natural eddy is a hurricane. Okay? you guys know that in the center of the storm, there is less pressure, right? Consequently, the air that is surrounding the center of the storm has more pressure, right? So that creates a flow from plus to minus. From plus to minus. Minus is also a trait of the devil, negative. From plus to minus. Okay? From plus to minus. So, it's from plus to minus, therefore it breaks things up. Of course, if a hurricane were to happen around here, hey, you run, right? On the weekend there were tornadoes in San Joaquin were announced. So you know that if something like that happens, you need to escape, run for your life. Okay? Are we together? So, in the cascade, you see the breaking of what is together again and again and again and again. But the movement is universal. It's always going in. You never see, unless it's a movie turned the other way, a natural eddy going out. It's always going in. And as it goes in, I repeat myself, it becomes violent, it breaks things up. It becomes divisive as the games that we have played. So you could see a number if you pay a little bit of attention here. 0, put a dot, negative, 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 and many more negatives, right? But you could place a number, right? Because that shape has a number, which is the number of an eddy. Huh? What is the number of an eddy? What number do you see there? 6. For those of you that know that 6 is somehow associated with the devil, remember? In the book of Revelation, it is said that, hey, this is wisdom. There is a person that is going to be the Antichrist, and that person is associated with 666. But in here, I'm not talking about 3 6s, I'm talking about infinitely many 6s. Okay? Here, infinitely many 6s. From plus to minus. Okay? From plus to minus, infinitely many 6s. Okay? So I say to you, as I will explain later, that 2/3 is the number of the devil. Oh, you're going to get this and that, but there is something that you're not going to get. That's the way it is. That's the devil speaking. 2/3. It's missing something. Okay? Of course. He's a liar. You know that? And a killer from the beginning. And in him, there is no truth at all. Who said that? Well, I just said it, but it's not good. That was Jesus Christ describing the devil. Okay, so we'll see those things in more detail next week. Okay? So, I'm a hydrologist. This is sad. 2,200 kids die today on any given day because of lack of sanitation, because of lack of water. Okay? I mean, this is horrible in terms of poverty, but this is now deaths. So I put that in there to make you reflect on what is going on. I don't have the slides anymore because I have decided not to include them. But you guys, in my God-given books that now you have, you will find that if you choose the exact same numbers that nature chooses, 70-30, and you ask yourselves the question, where is the mass? Of course, the mass is going to be concentrated on fewer thorns than others because of the 70-30 distribution that you get. But the following thing is true. If you choose the 70-30 and you apply not 12 times but 20 times, and you compare with the numbers of where is the money in the United States circa year 2000, you get a very, very good match. By the way, that is one of the reasons I ended up writing this little book, The Hypotenuse. And indeed, I wrote this book and I sent it to a bunch of dignitaries, people that are already in government right now. Because basically, we say, we beat this. These are bad. The walls came down. I mean, I'm talking about Berlin, okay? But this is no panacea, as you know. And this is following a 70-30 cascade, and cascades dissipate. So, if you don't want something to dissipate, you need to do something. You need to add work. I mean, it's up to you and me to do what needs to be done. So, the question is, what can we do based on everything that you have learned? Well, the obvious thing is, these cascades are divisive, so whenever you are encountered by these things, do them in reverse. Okay? So don't participate in division. Of course, in the Sermon on the Mount, which you guys are going to read in a couple of weeks, there are going to be many teachings that have to do with that. So in other words, don't make it worse with your actions. If somebody strikes you, put the other cheek. Don't fight back so that division continues. Okay? So that's common sense for peace. By the way, why peace? Because the opposite of violence is peace. And what we want is peace. Live at low Reynolds numbers. So, what does that mean? The inertia has to be low. The inertia is associated with the velocity at which you live. By the way, it happens to all of us. If you are quite in a hurry and everything is going very, very fast, you have no time to realize that something is happening that requires your attention. So, you need to slow down. Okay? There is a scale that basically says, live your life one day at a time. This is hard to say because you guys are always in a hurry. Not only you, I mean, all of us, modern people are in a hurry. You have to know the answer before the question is asked. Hey, slow down. Another way you can do to live slowly is increase your viscosity. By the way, I describe the viscosity of a fluid to tell you, hey, you are a fluid. And you have a viscosity. The viscosity is your ability to deal with things in a peaceful manner. There are some people that have very little viscosity, right? You just say something and poof. Okay? So, so those people, hey, go and exercise. Hey, pray a little bit, do something so that negative energy disappears. Because then I'm going to be a participant of these things. Another way to describe the same thing is fill the valleys and cut the mountains to restore unity. Who said that? Three people said that. Two prophets, well, two prophets and another prophet. But two prophets from antiquity, on the name of Baruch and Isaiah, and then a more modern prophet on the name of John the Baptist. I drink for him, fellow hydrologist, and you go back. Okay? So, to be precise, what is it that John the Baptist said? He said, let every valley be filled and every mountain and hill be caught. Let everything that is winding become straight. And let everything that is rough becomes smooth. And then all mankind shall see the salvation of God. See? That's what he says. I took that seriously because that sounds like an algorithm. Okay? So let's do it. But let me backtrack. And let's do it. Sorry for this. But you have this object. Hey, fill the valleys and cut the mounds. Okay? Fill the valleys and cut the mounds. What do you get? What do you get? Well, you go back to the essential bar of modeling clay, which I'm going to baptize for you as equilibrium. You go to equilibrium. Okay? You go to equilibrium. If the process of division is turbulence, the process of putting things together is love. Let me get this recorded. This doesn't work. Right? This doesn't work. 6, 6, 6, 6. Doesn't work. This is selfish. Why is it that it doesn't work? Because if you apply it to you and you say, I, clearly it doesn't work. You end up crying. It doesn't work. Of course, I'm talking about cloud 9. Right? By the way, that expression doesn't exist in Spanish, but it does exist here. Cloud 9. Oh man, I'm in cloud 9. Ooh. What happens there is that you love. The opposite of this is, what do you want to do tonight? Oh, whatever you say. No, whatever you say. Oh, whatever you say. Well, sometimes it's difficult to come to an agreement. But what I'm trying to describe in that is that you are not thinking about you. You are thinking about the other. That's what love is. Okay? That love goes from minus to plus. It's unnatural. To love is unnatural. Of course, it's a decision that you make. I'm going to love no matter what. This person I don't like, but I'm going to love this person. Because this person is my uncle, or somebody that, hey, so you decide. Right? That's what it is. So you see that the 6 becomes a 9, and this stuff gives to reconciliation. So, from the citation I did from Isaiah, this condition has to be associated with the salvation of God. Under Christianity, the salvation of God has a name, it's Jesus Christ. So, that will have to be associated with Jesus Christ. So, let's study this condition a little bit more. So that is the solution, is reconciliation. So this is flat. So I can ask the questions. How much mass is there from beginning to beginning? Nothing. How much mass is there from beginning to the end? 100%, the same as before. Right? How much mass is there from beginning to the middle? Well, this is flat, so the answer is middle. So when you plot, you don't get a Davis staircase, but rather you get a ramp. And that ramp is straight. By the way, if you read the Bible carefully, you are going to find that straightness is talked about in many places. And this is what the way for us to live. To do it right is to make it straight. Prepare to the Lord straight paths. The Bible doesn't say, hey, prepare to the Lord crooked paths. No, it has to be straight. the day, not at night. For people to see. That's straight. So, the process of the code for peace transforms what you have before into something that is straight. By the way, if I am doing this, followed by this and followed by that, all of a sudden you say, gee, I'm messing it up. When you realize that you are messing it up, you say, oh man, I have to ask for forgiveness. Would you please forgive me? Yeah. Okay? So she did. All of a sudden, we are at the same level again. Okay? So that's what needs to happen. So you make it right. You make it straight. Okay? By the way, this condition doesn't mean that there is a balance between good and evil. Okay? No. Equilibrium is such that is good without evil. There's nothing wrong in that bar. Okay? It's good without evil. So let's study more properties of this. This is level 0, right? Of the games. Level 0 is. By the way, what is this? This is 50-50 with no holes. That's what describes this. 50-50 with no holes. I say to you that that is equivalent to say, love one another as I have loved you. So you are 50-50 with anybody and everybody. So you don't leave anybody out. And with everybody you are equal. 50-50 with no holes. Are we together? Yes? There is only one solid condition that doesn't have thorns or dust. Okay? Only one. This one. Any other combination has thorns and dust. Dust you are, and to dust you shall return. Remember that? So dust has to do with death. So this is the antithesis of that. So, I keep reading. A straight way and truthful relations provide life. Let me explain. Why life? Because this thing does not dissipate. It's not a cascade, so it doesn't dissipate. The opposite of dissipation is life. Okay? So I'm doing it from the right. Life. Truthful relations. The 50-50 is the way to deal with life. Okay? 50-50. Fair with everybody. Right? And the way as shown here is straight. Right? Are you with me still? I wonder if the people in Colorado are going to arrive to this place in the lecture. I mean, this is not a conference, you know, this is a class. I'm taking as much time as I need to. Oh, the way, the truth, and the life. Of course, this is the hypotenuse, right? The distance from here to there is the root of 2. The root of 2. It's not 2, it's the root. It's the essence of 2. The root of 2. Okay? This, as you know, is the equation of the hypotenuse. I'll show it to you in a second. So, the shortest linear design does it well, and those that practice it follow the root of 2. Okay? So you need to go to the root, to the essence of things, to the root. Okay? So having said this, imagine that any one of you decides to land on the hypotenuse. So what happened to you? Huh? By the way, some people would argue, oh, this is 45 degrees. You're going to kill yourself. I say, yeah, but you have a parachute. So, what happens to that person? He's going to slide to the bottom. And what is the bottom? It's the origin. This is the origin, right? This point is the origin. So, I'm going to complete the phrase. The phrase says, this is Jesus Christ speaking. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And nobody goes to the Father, the origin, except through me, the hypotenuse. Okay? And that is John 14:7. Okay? By the way, y equal to x in year 33, that's Jesus Christ. This is the y, and this is the x. Is the man crucified on the cross. This is very consistent with the scripture, because if you go to St. Paul, the folly is that he died on the cross, and that there are people that are trying to take out the cross. But the cross is absolutely essential in defining who Jesus Christ was. Okay? By the way, I am the first one to say, how did I know that y equal to x was Jesus Christ when I was doing these things years ago? I say to you, I don't know. Surely it came from above. But geometrically, it does make sense that Jesus is who that is. Okay, so I have to hurry. So there is a poem here for me to read that is called Pathways, that shows the different alternatives that we have. The hypotenuse or else. Because all the others are there is the staircases. And of course, we choose. So, two options before us, two pathways ahead. The one is the longest, the other is straight. We journey directly or go by the legs. We follow intently or end up in pain. By walking the flatness or hiking the spikes, we travel in lightness or take serious frights. The incentive is unity and the goal proportion. The key is forgiveness and the goal, true notion. In wandering wickedness, there is never fruit, but in ample humbleness, one encounters the root. Of course, this is an important equation. This is the equation of the class. Any one of you and me included, raised to the power 0 is equal to 1. And of course, 1 is 0.9999999. So the 9, the love, is part of unity, and that unity is part of how we behave, and the behavior to which we are called is to become saints. To do the right thing always. Oh, that's impossible. Well, that is what the Sermon on the Mount tells us that we should do. Okay? Of course, this is to be achieved with help from above and so on. Okay? So, I'm going to skip some things because, important. 50-50 no holes is this point in this square. These are P's and these are H's. So there is only one point that works. Okay? So this is the proverbial needle in a haystack, like this. Okay? It is easier for a camel to pass by the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. We are going to respond to that quotation for next week's prophecy. Okay? By the way, that is absolutely true. The probability of this point is 0. The eye of a needle was a door in Jerusalem that was big enough for a camel to pass. I mean, the camel needed perhaps to be taken some of his load out so he could be pushed to go through. But that is positive in terms of the likelihood that that happens. But this point, for us, the only way to find it is we need to repent. There's no other possibility. If I happen to be here and somebody's there and I say, oh, that person is bad, this person is bad. Of course, Jesus says, this is hypocritical. Right? Jesus says, why do you see the, the citation? Why do you see the book that is in your eye, that the speck, there is another word. Huh? The log. The log. You know, the log is something negative. You know. Why do you see the speck on your brother's eye while on your own there is a log? Take away the log and then go and help your brother. Okay? So it's very easy to visualize that that is the case here. Of course, if you are here, you don't judge as instructed in the Sermon on the Mount. Okay? So, recognizing the gravity of what we don't do well makes us go to the origin. And in case you were wondering about the 6s and the 9s as perhaps being a bit arbitrary, and I know that this is going to be arbitrary for many people, that happens to be encountered in the Bible too. When Jesus Christ was crucified with thorns that symbolize our sinfulness, the repetition of wrongdoings that we have done. The Bible in the Gospel according to Mark says that there was darkness from noon until 3 p.m. And Jesus Christ died at 3 p.m. You know that? But the Bible doesn't say with noon and 3 p.m., nor it says, as it was suggested this past Sunday, that there were 60 gallons in a jar. I mean, these are modern terminologies. In antiquity, time was measured from the time the sun went up. So 6 in the morning was time 0. 7 in the morning was the hour 1. Noontime was the 6th hour. And Jesus died on the 9th hour. Okay? So the Bible says that there was darkness from the 6th to the 9th. And I say to you that that statement continues to be true. That when we don't pay attention, and the 6th is in us, in other words, the negative associated with the devil, that intrinsically our lives are dark. And that darkness has to be taken out. And I think that's enough. I think that's enough. I don't know what I missed. Well, this is another song with numbers that I'll do next week. Okay? 609. Anyway, enough. So time is up. So we'll see you next week. We are going to discuss about inequalities of brothers and sisters that live much worse than us. And in the following week, we are going to do readings from the Bible that will support the kinds of things that were said here today.